Hi friends, it's Sarah with Ruffles and Rainboots.com, and today we're going to be prepping for the holiday season with easy polymer clay donuts. These are bakeable, they're very solid, and I hope you like this quick tutorial. If you like to make them, stick around. As always, please give this video a like so that I know you're here crafting with me. So as you might imagine, we're going to need some polymer clay. I use Sculpey and Fimo clay. I also even use the kid clay if I want like a really vibrant color, or even the glitter ones. So I'm just using a mix of pink, blue, purple, and white. And now that brown, you can either buy a beige clay or you can use the dark and mix it with some white. I tend to buy white clay in really big blocks. All right, we're gonna make some sprinkles first, which is a super fun time. You can also make a drizzle this way. So you're going to just put the string, or like make a big string of clay. You're going to make a string and not a log. And the reason I'm saying that is these have to be very, very thin. We're going to cut the clay into little like jimmies or whatever they are. But you can see like this is getting pretty thin, right? Look how thin that is. So I'm just going to make it a little bit thinner and then set that one aside as well. You can do whatever colors you want. I just did 3 or 4 of them. And again, you can do like red, white, and green for your Christmas colors, orange, brown, and a darker green for the fall colors. So if you make all of these now, you can probably do this in less than 10 minutes. These are that easy to make. And when you when you roll your really big strings of polymer clay, they're going to make a lot of sprinkles. They're also going to make like these little round chippy things when you cut it. So just as an FYI, you're going to have a lot of sprinkles just from that tiny little bit of clay. So for the white, I'll just tell you, when working with white clay, always clean your surface right before you did it. So I'm using a cutting mat here. This was filmed a very, very long time ago, and I did not clean my white. So just FYI, that's always a tip I'll give you. Now, to create the donuts, however many donuts you want to do, just make equal-ish sizes of clay, and then you're just going to roll it into a sphere, making sure that all the cracks are out of it. You're going to flatten that sphere, but it's still at least maybe, I would say more than 1/8 of an inch, just because you don't want any cracking. So if it's me, I use 1/4 of an inch. And then I just used a chopstick to create a hole, and now I'm just going to round off the little edges of that hole by pressing my finger around them. Now, if there's a pretty side and an ugly side, that's great because we're going to cover up the ugly side with the topping or the glaze for our donuts. So again, if you make a mistake, this is crafting. Handmade isn't perfect, and I think that's one of the cool parts of it. All right, so you can see this is real time. I mean, I'm not speeding this up at all. I'm going to be making 3 in this set just because I have a little gnome that I can match these colors with. All right, and you can see they're not perfect. I have to go back around and kind of fix that one because the hole is thinner on one side than it is on the other. So again, no big deal. Just a little sphere, tamp it down flat. And you can use a glass if you want to avoid any fingertips. Like let's say you're just going to be using the snakes as a drizzle instead of putting a glaze on top. If you're doing that, you want to limit the amount of fingerprints. Now, I will say, as I've shared in other clay videos, before you bake anything, you can use a small paintbrush along with nail polish remover and just brush the entire top, and it'll take some of the little detritus or your fingerprints away, smooth all that out. Now for my glaze, I'm just making a literally paper thin piece of clay, and it is flimsy, okay? So we want to make sure that we don't have any holes, but do make it flimsy so it just looks like a glaze. I let mine go over the edge on this one, you can see. I'll show you in a second. But all I'm doing is just pressing it down into the donut just gently, really, really lightly. And it kind of has these like ridges on the side or ripples on the side like a glaze falling over the donut would do. Isn't this easy? I love quick things like this you can prep in advance. And if you have a nice little spot over by your crafting area, you can make a ton of these up. And you can also just design as you go, meaning you can make the donuts with the glaze or without, and then use bakeable clay to put it all together. Bakeable clay is like a liquid clay you can get at the craft store. Um, it's good for joining pieces after the fact or even during the production. All right, so here's my last little glaze color. Isn't that pretty blue? Y'all, the clay section at the craft stores is one of my favorite sections because it's so colorful. I love bright color. Okay, so as you can see, I'm just going to pop all those down. And now here I am using the nail polish remover with a small little paintbrush to remove any detritus or my fingerprints. I'm going to do that on the front and the back of it just to make sure we can get those all nice and tidy. Now, if you're gluing these in place somewhere or you're gluing them into a gnome holding them or onto a Christmas ornament, then you don't have to do this. Also, these can also be made into any size. So you can make a really large one. Just pay attention to the baking directions. I'll give you a tip at the end here when it comes to baking. Okay, so now I'm going to take those little snakes we set aside. And again, you can do two things. You can bake them like I did here, and they're already baked right here. These are very lightly baked, meaning they are stiff but not burned. So just FYI, put these in for only a couple of minutes, okay? So you can put them in at the temp it calls for out on your clay. Most of mine are done at 220 degrees. Most everything I do is at 220 degrees in a toaster oven that I use specifically for crafting. All right, so now that I've baked those, I'm just cutting them up with a little box cutter. You can use scissors, but FYI, these will go flying in some cases. Just cut off the very, very end with the really thin parts, because what we want to do is we want to have them chunky enough that we can see what we're doing. Okay, so here's the bakeable clay. I'm just going to add a little tiny bit. You don't need a lot of this. I'm also going to be lightly pressing them in so you can see from the side here. I put them in a tiny bit of glue and then just kind of squish them down a little bit, but not like too hard because I want them above the glaze, right? Like they just fell on top like a regular donut. But if you do sell and you're shipping, you may want to press them down just a little bit more or use a bigger amount of clay, glue. It's like the bakeable clay. But I don't know. I think that them sitting on top is good. So I will give you a tip about how I never have any breakage, and that is because I bake them and let every piece cool in the oven. I usually leave it there overnight. I want to make sure that every piece of that thing is set and solid, and I'm not moving it. I'm not changing the temperature, and what that helps to do is prevent cracking and anything from breaking off. All right, so once they're baked, here's what they are. You can glaze these to make them really shiny if you want. Let me know down in the comments, what do you think of this quick craft? And as always, please like, share, and subscribe for more crafty fun.